right, so the rain is drying up and moving out of here. We got a giant lake. It's rained a lot here, but the sun's out. It's gonna be a good day. Went to bleed the brakes this morning with the wife. The front brake, still haven't done that. And of course my brake line's leaking. So my line right here, my hard line is leaking out right here. So we're gonna have to take that apart. You can see the brake fluid on it right there. So we're gonna have to take this apart at a later time and redo that, maybe this week sometime, to get these front brakes where they're working. Besides that, also put water in it this morning. We have a leak on the front of the motor. So I don't know where that's at, but we'll have to probably tear some of the stuff back apart and find that leak, but it's also not gonna affect us today. So seems like fuel and oil, which is what we need today, is not leaking at all. You see the leaks up the bottom of that. There's water running down from somewhere. So we'll have to get in there and figure that out, but at least we got no oil leaks that I can see right now, no fuel leaks. So we are good for startup. We're just gonna be leaking some oil, and of course we don't need brakes. So John's on his way down. He should be down any minute now. I kind of woke the car back up this morning, vacuumed it out, you know, cleaned it out because it was just disgusting, just from the dust and sitting up, but straighten it up because it's been sitting since we blew up at a TKM. We've kind of thrown stuff in, dust has been in, got everything plugged back in last night. So we should be good to go, y'all. I think John's gonna do the video on his channel. That's what I have told him. I feel like he deserves the content. He's made the drive. It's about an hour and 40 minutes from him to come down here and help me out. He's the one doing the initial startup. I'm not doing it. I feel like he needs to cover it on his channel. We'll see what he does. We'll see what happens today, but fingers crossed everything goes smooth. I think we got it this time. If y'all seen John's video, then you know how the first startup on this car went. So we got some issues to work through. Motor runs good, but normally when you have a new car, it's never that smooth. Now, I wanted John to do the video because all I would be able to do is point the camera at the car and show you it idling, and that's it, because I'm asking questions as we go, and I'm trying to learn and figure all this out too, whereas John knows what he's doing. He's on the keyboard. He can explain to you why and all that. John's literally telling me kind of what to do, so he is better at explaining that to y'all. So make sure you, if for some reason you're on my channel and you're not subscribed to Turbo John Racing, make sure you jump over to Turbo John Racing and subscribe to his channel, because I am going to the track with John and Randy, so some of my passes, or quite a bit, will end up on John's channel if I'm racing. If I'm racing and he's covering it, then he will be doing a lot of the filming. So we're gonna go through this. We're gonna take care of the couple issues, leaks, odds and ends that we have. We're gonna get this thing ready, and we're gonna keep on moving forward, y'all. All right, so check out how I just went ahead and took my bolts out of the vinegar that we had soaking in, and check out how these things turned out. This is amazing. I've never done this. Some of y'all, this is probably old news too. But these things were just completely so rusted you could barely get the freaking socket on them. And that white vinegar soaking it all weekend literally just peeled it all right off. Now I took a little scrub brush and just ran over all these in the sink to just make sure the threads were cleaned out and all that. Now I'm just curious of how I keep them from going back rust. Now I know I could probably put like a Pour 15 on them, but I don't really want to clog the threads up. You know, if you put a Pour 15 on it, it might, you know, clog the threads a little. I'm not 100% sure. But what I do know is that oily stuff does not rust. So we are going to put it in this empty oil container that I cut. And then we've got some oil, let's see here, some old Pennzoil. We are going to let these things soak in Pennzoil until I'm ready to use them. And that way, hopefully, it will be completely soaked and covered in oil, and maybe it will slow down them rusting again, because since they are steel. And one, I'm not trying to put stainless on there. I'm a little scared of the stainless breaking inside the head. I've had stainless screws and bolts break in the past, and it just makes me very uneasy. So I really like just a steel bolt. And like I said, I can't afford to buy the nice hardware, you know. So I think I'm gonna put some locking nuts on these, or some locking washers, and roll with it. We're not replacing them all. So we're just gonna let this sit in some motor oil. I don't know when I'm gonna get them put in, but at least they'll already be soaking. And then when I pull them out, they should be nice, and you know, we'll wipe them off with a rag, but it should be nice and covered in. Ooh, well, maybe that will slow it down from it rusting. And we're only gonna replace these studs, you know, that are very easy to get to. Like probably these top ones, definitely all the top ones will get replaced. Maybe some of the bottom ones, not 100% sure, but definitely 100% of the top ones will get replaced. All right, so we are going to run over here to Alternator Specialists in Wilmington, North Carolina. They specialize in obviously alternators, starters, stuff like that. So the alternator's not charging on the car. Now I have looked up online on Coyote forums, and other people have successfully swapped the Coyote into Fox bodies and stuff like that and used the factory alternator. And all they hooked up was the big wire on the stud that goes to the battery. They didn't have to hook up none of the other little wires. There's no exciter wire or nothing like that on the Coyote. And originally when I come over here in the past, if y'all recall, I think we talked about it on the video. I know we compared the F-150 alternator to the Mustang alternator because there's a lot of talk about how they're supposedly different sizes and all this stuff in the Coyote world. And I did a side-by-side comparison of them when I was in the middle of swapping the alternator on. I took the F-150 alternator over here. He tested it on the bench and said that correct. All you need to do is hook the battery wire up to the stud. He put a voltmeter on it, and he physically showed me on the bench that that alternator was spitting out current with no exciter wire, no wire hooked up. There's a pigtail that plugs in that has 3 wires. Nothing was hooked to anything. It was just that one wire, and it was charging. We then later, I purchased, I think, a pulley from him that was supposed to be possibly different, closer to the Mustang. Got home, it still didn't clear. The pulley didn't do what I wanted it to do, and so I ordered a Mustang alternator from a junkyard off of eBay. Now, I never took that back over to him, never had it tested or anything like that, so I'm curious if we just simply have a bad used alternator since I tested my F-150 one and then switched to a Mustang one, or if it won't charge because it is flipped around backwards. So the alternator is actually flipped backwards compared to what it is from the factory. So I'm gonna go talk to him, gain a little bit of information on this topic. That way we can hopefully get the alternator up that way and running. That way whenever the car is running, we're charging the battery and we don't have to continuously keep it hooked to a charger. So let's go see what he has to say, and then I will fill y'all in on what I learned about the Coyote alternator. All right, so we got our alternator swapped out, a different pulley on it. So as you can see, this pulley, okay, is just a regular pulley, and the pulley that was on it, the Mustang pulley, okay, there's actually a clutch in here, he was explaining. So it actually has a clutch, and it will only, if you turn it, I'm holding it in one hand, which you can, if you spin it, one way will actually pull, and then the other way will just slip because of the clutch is built into it. So basically the alternator will charge in its correct position, but when you flip it around backwards for a race car application, like many of us Coyote guys do for when we use the relocation bracket, it no longer charges because the pulley is literally just slipping. Now I asked him, I said, what's the purpose of that clutch that's built into that pulley? Like from the factory, what's the purpose of it? He said he has no clue technically what Ford was thinking, but on his end, absolutely nothing. Nothing that he can see, nothing that he knows of would, you know, explain why that a clutch style pulley was used versus a regular pulley. So he says this should work. We're gonna throw it on. We're gonna try it. He did bench test it with the Mustang pulley with the clutch in it, and it was charging, and it's correct, going correctly. Also, again, with only the main wire on it, nothing to do with the pigtail at all, nothing hooked to it. So he said that it should charge also in reverse now that he has changed the pulley. So we will see. All right, so we're gonna work on this thing tonight. After getting this thing running yesterday, it's almost like, okay, well, it runs. Let's move on to something else. Let's roll this thing outside. Let's put a for sale sign on it. Let's build another car. We're not quitting. Had to make myself get out of bed and come out here and work on this thing tonight. Got a leaking brake line down here. The hard line is leaking, so my goals for tonight is to try to fix that line and put the alternator back on and take the washers out of the Procharger bracket. I'll show you that. That way tomorrow, Tuesday, when I get off work, come home, crank this thing up again in the driveway, and A, see if the alternator's charging, B, see if the Procharger belt alignment's fixed, hopefully have the bleed the brakes, hopefully have that fixed, but C, we're gonna let this thing build up heat and actually idle out there and see where it stops climbing to. So we're not gonna let it climb to an unsafe thing. Talked to Kevin today. He said when we're making passes and racing this thing, he wants it preferably 140 or below on the temperature, and safe is 190 or below, he said, on the temperature, which is, I read online, 230 or below, that you have nothing to worry about above 230. Kevin, TKM, says 190. So me and John got it to 190, 191 before we cut it off. So I'm curious where we fall at between the 190 and the 230. Really, since Kevin said 190, I really don't want to go 230, probably 190 to 210. Where do we fall at where the temperature stops climbing and it just holds? If it continues to climb and doesn't hold, then that means we have a coolant problem. We probably either need a second fan, or make some changes. Preferably we would start with a second fan. So let's dive into it. Let's see if we can get this brake line to stop leaking first, because that's what's holding us up from bleeding the brakes, which is what's holding us up from putting the car in gear while it's running. And then we have a lot more little stuff to go through. All right, so this line right here has been leaking. I actually come out here and it was just dripping yesterday whenever we pumped it, but then over the day, this was upside down like that. It made a whole puddle under the tire, ran all the way out to the driveway underneath the garage door. So definitely got to get this fixed. So we're about to take this thing apart and see why in the world this bad boy is leaking. All right, so I'm gonna chalk this up as a sloppy flare. All right, so right there you can see how this flare is sloppy. It's almost like it's lopsided. It's lopsided slightly. Okay, so last time I did this, I was using an Advanced Auto Parts flaring tool, and it was extremely sloppy. So ignore the ice cream and the crackers. We went to O'Reilly's, snagged us another one because I figured try O'Reilly's this time since we did Advanced last time, and of course it's the same crap. So I don't know how good this is gonna work, but we're gonna cut this back off and reflare it. Really, camera doesn't pick it up. There's a little groove right there. You can kind of see it. It's definitely sloppy. I figured it might squish itself to seal up, but it didn't. So let's cut this end off and remake it. All right, so let's see here. Here is the one we cut off. Okay, so you can see how it's lopsided. Actually, you can see it right there too. If you look at it from this angle, you can see how it's heavier over here on the side of my fingernail. Okay, it's lopsided. Pushed it all to one side, it made that ridge right there around it, okay? That was the one we cut off. So the first one I just did again, I filed it, it looks better, but look at that. It's lopsided. Again, see that? So, okay, you can see how over here on the right, it's less for anybody that is new to this, and on the left, right over here, it's more. It's lopsided. You can actually see the brake line right there. Okay, so in this stupid kit, it shows we're using 3/16 line. So it's labeled 3/16. You can't mess it up. A quarter, all that stuff. All right. When you come right here and you get this guy and you match it to 3/16, okay? It's not a 5/16, it's 3/16. And you put it inside this line, it's actually loose.
So it's actually loose. You probably can't, the camera ain't gonna pick it up. But if you come to your quarter, fitting right here and put it inside the line, I don't know if it'll go in this one, because this one's so lopsided and messed all up. Okay, it don't go in that one. But whenever you cut your line, if you put your quarter in there, it goes in there beautifully after you know, dechafe or whatever, deburr the inside of it. It goes in there perfect. Very nice, tight fit. The quarter goes in there. You push it in with your fingers. You ain't got to beat it in there. You ain't got to ram it in there, nothing. It slips right in perfectly. When you do that and you use the quarter in the 3/16 spot, it makes it so that this mushroom head thing doesn't lean over. When you're trying to use this one that's 3/16 and you start turning it down, no matter how much you center it, because the stupid tool right here, the end wobbles, okay, and this point comes with it is sharper, more of an angle than this dimple in here. So it keeps wanting to walk crooked, and that's what pushes it to one side. But if you use the quarter, then it does pretty decent. I don't understand that. Y'all comment below why, if this is just cheap tool, if it's because this is for steel and this is what is this, copper or whatever. You know, if that's the issue, like, what's the issue? But I do know that by switching to a quarter, I got a better double flare out of that. So 3/16 inverted flare. We are going to put this back on the car, pump it up, see if it leaks. This is the reason why I warned you guys that when you're painting your chassis, think wisely about it. Because as you can see, the brake fluid that has sat on it all day has completely took off, and is still wet with brake fluid, has took the paint off of it, took it right off of it. That's the reason why I told y'all in the video, you know, when we paint chassis and stuff like that, to think really hard about, do you really want a base coat, clear coat chassis such as this? If you're a DIY guy and you want to do it, that's fine. But if you struggle with it and it's a lot of work, then you might want to rethink it. You might want to consider some spray paint. To me, it's just another day in the office, so it's not that big of a deal. But if I could go back and redo this car, which I guess I could have redid it while the motor was out of it, but I would probably base coat, clear coat this, and then from the firewall forward, I'd rattle can it with something more satin like that with that chassis roll bar paint. That's my advice to y'all for moments like this, because then you could literally just push a piece of cardboard back there and just hit it with some roll bar paint and chassis roll bar paint, and it would be fine. Now we are going to use this Fax Fix 2-in-1 Universal Gloss Black. So I'm gonna mix it up, coat that out with some black. We don't want that stuff to turn rusty and look ugly like this that I still haven't fixed, and we're gonna put our fitting back in. It's cool and all to have these base coat, clear coat chassis. Me and Randy both have them. Randy's, everything is painted on his, but he works in the collision industry. And he grew up in a body shop, and me, I'm obviously a painter, so it's nothing to neither one of us to either get somebody to paint it because we know it people, or to do it ourselves. So just think about that, because of that situation exactly right there. So I got my touch up on it, and it looks pretty good. My bubblegum welds and my grinding looks worse than the paint. Now we're gonna grab our fitting, and we're gonna put our fitting back in it. Y'all just think before you do stuff. All right, so I'm by myself. I ain't gonna drag the wife out of bed, so I'm gonna put a clean paper towel down where it's been dripping, go pump the brakes, come back, see if it's still leaking. If it's not leaking, we'll put some more fluid in it. Now, if I went and got the wife, she would come down here and help me. She'd come down here, I think I can still hear it. She'd come down here and bleed him tonight and everything. I can hear that one over there leaking. But I'm not gonna bug her tonight. I'm telling you, these double flares, I really hate them. Yep, sure she's still leaking. Man, I don't know what else to do. All right, after talking to Jason, figured it out, I think. So this is my 3AN side. Okay, when you're doing the 3ANs, I've had no issues with these at all. Is you ordered the 3AM tube nuts, okay? These go over your tube, and these are your sleeve. This sleeve right here is very important because it gives you your strength, okay? And then with the 3AN, it's just gonna be a single flare, but the tube sleeve gives you strength So Jason said, which I just ordered, that what he does, we're talking about Jason Braswell with BPF Fab, that he uses these adapters I've just ordered that adapt the 3/16 single flare, which is 3/8/24 thread, to a 3AN male. So we got a 3AN male down there, and we will have an adapter that goes in here and adapts it to a 3AN male. So this line will be 3AN on this side, 3AN on this side, because everything up here is AN. This was the very first time that I was trying to use something that wasn't AN, because you can't order, or I did not find, this chassis tab kit. You know, these pieces right here with AN on this side, you only find them AN on this side. So then he said you have to use an adapter to get that. So we just put that order in for that, but I've wasted a whole night on this. So I'm gonna go ahead, since I already got everything out, and I'm gonna go ahead and rebend up this line because I've cut this line too short, and make it AN, and then we'll probably go ahead and cut that side and remake that end AN, and hopefully have enough room to not have to redo that line, because that hard line runs all the way from here up over to cow and everything like that. So we don't want to redo that one. This one's not that bad. So let's redo this line before we quit tonight. To do the 3AN, I use my granddad's tool. This is from years and years ago. He was a mechanic back in the 70s. And I believe from the research I did, I think this angle is a touch different on this versus the kit that I just had from Advanced Auto Parts. But this is the tool that I've always used to do my 3AN lines, and I have successfully done them. We had the whole entire car, brakes working, everything perfect. It's just I had all of that braided line, and a lot of y'all on YouTube didn't like that. So y'all were saying that, all kinds of stuff. I mean, we had like 2 videos worth. I don't even want to go back at it again. But I wanted my chassis to look better with hardline. And so that's the reason why I switched from there to here and over with hardline. But I have had the whole thing plumb with the flex line, everything working. And I had hardline from here all the way back and hardline across the whole axle. Everything was 3AN that I had did myself, and nothing leaked. So I'm very confident at doing the 3AM tube nuts and having no issues at all. Well, as you can see right there, we got a line back. So I had to order them adapters. Went ahead and used my commercial account. So I have a commercial account through Summit Racing. I'm a wholesaler basically for different parts off Summit. Get them a little bit cheaper, get faster shipping, stuff like that. But yeah, I wasted my whole freaking night on this one stupid line right here. So switching it up, redoing it, ended up with 3AN on that side, 3AN on that side, ordered the adapter, so hopefully they'll come in. Sadly, it just puts me back farther. Didn't get to put the alternator on. Maybe I'll do it right when I come home tomorrow and still try to fire it up. I don't know, really don't even care about firing it back up right now. Kind of want these brake situation fixed, but we still gotta do the other side. It's almost 11 o'clock. Unfortunately, I know what work week I have ahead of me, so I've got to just call it a night. If you are interested in how to do these kind of brake lines, AN lines, or do hard lines, I'm learning as I go, so I'm not some, genius or whatever, but as you can see, I mean, I think I do decent. My stuff's not super tacky. I did like a couple videos on these back when we redid this front end. I think I did a video on the tool I use. I use a basic eBay, Amazon tool. I'll just show you real fast. So it comes with 2 different ones. It's a brake line bending tool. You can order it off Amazon or eBay. This is the one I use. Basically, you mark where you want your bend to be. So, this one you'll just do whatever first, and then you'll go measure from here to here, or hold your line up, make a mark wherever you want that bend to be, no matter if you feel like it is right, wrong, incorrect, whatever. When the line is in here, that line needs to be right here on this bolt. So this thing will be open, your brake line will be sitting in here, put your Sharpie line right here. As this folds in, yes, your line's gonna end up like way over here or way over here. I can't remember which way it goes, but when you put it in the car, somehow that is correct. So just line it up with that. But you can go back, check my other videos out. Yeah, so that's where we're at for tonight. But I've got that line just sitting there, waiting. That way we don't have to make this line whenever these fittings come in. We can hopefully just screw it in, put some brake fluid in it, bleed the brakes. Hopefully it'll be good to go.